In this video, we are going to write some code to one of the examples of inheritance used in the previous video in order to show programmatically how to utilize inheritance. We will write code using a part of this example here where the student, teacher, and employee class all inherit from the person class. So the first thing we are going to do is create the person class. As you can see, I have already created a Java project in Eclipse and I named this project inheritance. Let's go ahead and right click on the project folder, hover over new, and select class. We will call this class person, and this class will not include the main method stub as it will not be the entry point for the program. Now that we have an empty person class, we can go ahead and initialize a string variable called name as well as a string variable called address. Next, we will create getter and setter methods for both the name and address variables. That is all we will include in the person class. Now that the person class is created, we can create a class that will inherit from the class. So let's create a new class called student, and once again, this class will not include the main method stub as it will not be the entry point for our program. Now to inherit the members of the person class, we will need to type extends person after the class name student. We will see exactly what this allows us to do in a minute. Within this student class, we are going to initialize an int variable named grade, a float variable named GPA, and a string variable named ID num. We will create getter and setter methods for all three of these variables. Let's go ahead and change GPA here from all caps to all lowercase, as variables named with all caps are typically used for constant variables, or variables whose value remains the same throughout the runtime of a program. After all the getter and setter methods are created, we are done working with the student class. Now let's create a main method so we can use the classes we have just created. To do so, we'll create a new class called school, and we will include the main method stub in this class. First, let's utilize the person class by instantiating a person object that we will name random person. Once the person object is instantiated, we can see what class members are available to use through this object, in this case random person, then typing a period. As you can see, a variable named address of the string type is available, as well as a variable named name of the string type. Also notice getAddress, getName, setAddress, and setName are all also available. The last thing to notice here is all the other options that are available. If you look at the members we just mentioned, they are all followed by the word person. That is because all the members that were just mentioned are all available through the person class that we created, and all the others are followed by the word object. That is because, as discussed in the previous video, all classes inherit from the object class. This is by default, meaning we did not have to write extends object after the class name person in the creation of the person class. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and utilize the setName method to assign a new name value to this person object. We will assign the name Bob to this object. Next, we will utilize the getName method to print the person object's name to the console. Similarly, we will utilize the setAddress method to assign an address value to the person object, then print the address to the console using the getAddress method. If we run the program, we can see we get Bob followed by 123 Main Street. Okay, great. Now we know the person class works as expected. Now let's comment out this and instantiate a student object that will be named student1. Once again, if we type student1 followed by a period, we can see all the available fields and methods available to this object. We can see we have a float variable named GPA, an int variable named grade, and a string variable named ID num. Notice all these fields are followed by the word student, telling us that all these fields are available through the student class. Also notice the string variables name and address are also available to us through the person class. By typing extends person after the class name student, any instantiated student object will inherit the fields and methods of the person class. We can prove that by utilizing the setName method on the student object student1. Keep in mind we never had to instantiate a person object to utilize the setName method. While we did instantiate a person object in the code above, the code is commented out and therefore is not processed when the program is ran. Okay, Now let's go ahead and utilize the setGrade method of the student class. Then we will utilize the setGPA method of the student class. Notice we are adding an F after the value of 3.8. That is because by default, when a floating point number is used in a Java program, it is automatically assumed to be the type double. And if we want to successfully run the program, we have to explicitly tell the compiler it is reading a float, and we do this by typing an F after the floating point value. In other words, since we are handling the GPA variable as a float, we will need to type 3.8 followed by an F like such to assign a value of 3.8 to the GPA variable. Now that that's out of the way, let's assign the value abc123 to the id num variable, and last we'll go ahead and assign the last value that is available to the student object, which is address. So to recap, the setName and setAddress methods are available to the student object because we created the student class to inherit from the person class. The setGrade, setGPA, and setIdNum methods are all available to the student object through the student class itself. The last thing we will do is print all the values we just assigned to the console using the get methods for each variable. When we run the program, we can see that all values are printed to the console. Most importantly, the name and address variables of the person class, as well as the methods to set and get the values of these variables, were all made available to the student object, student1, by utilizing inheritance. In terms of inheritance, the person class can be referred to as a superclass, a base class, or a parent class. The student class can be referred to as a subclass, a derived class, or a child class of the person class. As mentioned in the previous video, the benefit of inheritance is in the ability to reuse code from an existing class without having to write the code all over again in order to utilize it in the new class.